and welcome to Long Live the Queen, where we talk about the women who made history. And by we, I mean the royal we, because it's just me. Today we're going to talk about Catherine de Medici.
One day we will be remembered.
A suggestion was made that Diane de Poitiers would get the king going, and he'd get almost to the point of completion, and then he'd run down to Catherine's room, finish.
A fluffer.
And then he would go back up to his room where Diane was and do it again, because she had to claim her territory, basically. But how awkward is that? Her room was right underneath his, so she would have been able to probably hear him right above her. And also that peephole probably still existed, so she could probably full on watch if she wanted to.
Imagine having sex with your mistress and then being like, hold on, let me run down a flight of stairs.
Right?
And try not to get out of the mood.
And gross, not even time for a shower. Ew. So yeah, so there is suggestions that is how they had so many children so quickly, because Diane was getting him all excited and then go, impregnate your wife. And then come back and do the same thing again to me. Ugh.
It's funny they didn't even consider a threesome or something.
Right?
Put y'all in the same room.
I mean, they were very, very Catholic, but yeah, that's almost less awkward than what they were doing.
Put a partition up or something.
Right? And after her 10th pregnancy, the death of the twins, the royal doctors suggested that there should be no more royal children, that this was too dangerous. The queen was risking her life. She has 7 living children. She needs to stop having babies. Although if you watch The Serpent Queen, they portray it like it was Diane's thing. Like Diane was like, oh, it's dangerous. You should stop having sex with your wife now. And he was like, yeah, okay, because he was only doing it because she told him to anyway, which honestly could be true. But they were advised not to have any more children, that the queen might die on her next attempt. And the king decided that the only safe sex was no sex at all. And I mean, he's not totally wrong for back then. And he stopped sleeping with his wife completely. That's why she had 9
mistress didn't try and have him go for one more to try and offer.
Yeah, but I think she was fine with her place. She was happy to be the royal mistress. She was never going to be the queen. And if the queen died, he might have to get remarried, and it might be someone he actually likes. True. So she's like, no, we got to keep this queen safe because he doesn't care about this queen. And that is a rumor that she propped Catherine up so much because she could see that King Henri was not into Catherine. And she was like, okay, that's who I want him to be with, because I don't want to lose my spot. Because she's getting older at this point. He's in his mid to late 30s, so she's in her mid to late 50s at this point, his mistress. So it wasn't like he stopped visiting his wife because she was getting older. And he was like, oh, I can't have sex with someone in their 30s, because he was sleeping with someone in their 50s and totally fine with that. In 1555, Catherine de Medici read Nostradamus's book. This was a newfangled guy. He had some thoughts. He wrote a book, and she read it, and she was like, yes, this guy knows what's up. And she invited him to French court. She was like, Nostradamus, get over here. Let's talk. She definitely thought he was onto something. And one of his predictions was that King Henri would die in battle in his 40th year. And Catherine took that very seriously. She was like, I need to keep this guy around. If he knows when my husband, maybe we can avoid this if we have this guy around. So she kept Nostradamus around as kind of her private fortune teller. And Catherine had a group of ladies that worked for her called the Flying Squad. And it was, I know, it's kind of a rad nickname, but also wait till you hear what they did. So the Flying Squad was comprised of about 80 noble women and girls, because it was probably ages 12 and up, whose job it was to gather secrets from powerful men using seduction. 80 women!
Oh.
And the basic deal was they were to seduce these men to get information for the queen and tell the queen everything they found out. But don't tell her how they found it out, but also she told them, use your girlish charms, do what you need to do. And she also said, and don't get pregnant. So it wasn't like she didn't know what they were doing, but plausible deniability.
Seeking information out of people.
Yeah. And she wants to be like, oh no, I had no idea. My servant came and told me this, but I don't know how she found that out. Full plausible deniability, but she definitely knew. She was encouraging it. She was like, look, all you have to do is be sexy and they'll tell you anything.
I mean, kind of true.
Yeah. It was during this time that Mary, Queen of Scots' French uncles started getting really more power, because their niece was going to be the next queen after Catherine. And that was the whole point of Mary being betrothed to the Prince of France anyway, is she came from a powerful, noble French family. She was Mary, Queen of Scots because her father was the King of Scots, but her mother was a French gal. So her French uncles were kind of trying to take over. They were trying to buy the prince's love with a pretty girl. And it worked. He was a little guy. He was sickly. It's reported that even just walking would make him start to wheeze. He probably had some kind of asthma. He had weak lungs. And Mary Queen of Scots was large and in charge, and she was Queen Bee, and she would just, like, tell him things, and he'd be like, oh, yeah, whatever you want. Like, he thought she was the best.
Stomp all over him.
Yes. So we'll get back into that in Mary Queen of Scots episode, so people have to stay tuned for that, because we're not quite there yet,
Yes.
but we are going to get there. In 1559, the royal couple was 40, Catherine and Henri. And the Italian wars were finally over. Those are the wars from Catherine's childhood when she was held under siege. So this was a big moment. Now she's 40 and they're finally over. And they're hoping that sticks, because all it takes is for another battle to happen and they're not over. You don't know it's over until in history you can look back and say this is when it ended.
Right.
But they were still in the, it could maybe start up again. We're not so friendly with all these people. And part of the peace agreement for the Italian wars was that Catherine's daughter Elizabeth, who was 13, was being married to 32-year-old King of Spain. So, ew. And that would be the son of the Holy Roman Emperor. So the son of the man who held both of the French couple captive as children was like, hey, let's marry our kids, and that'll make sure we don't go to war again. And they were like, okay, yeah, fair. That's fair. Let's do that. And it would make their 13-year-old daughter the Queen of Spain, but also she's 13 and he's 32, so gross. King Henry participated in the joust for this marriage celebration, and I feel like celebration is in heavy air quotes because I don't think King Philip of Spain is something to celebrate. But they were celebrating. There was a joust. The king participated. His wife was begging him not to. He's 40. That Nostradamus thing said he was going to die in his 40th year. She was real nervous. She's like, please don't do this. Jousting is dangerous. It seems like maybe Diane was egging him on a little bit. Kind of a power play, like, oh, I think you should. Because the king was wearing her colors, like her favors. So he was like representing her, and she was like, no, I want you to fight. And he was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to fight. And the queen was like, please don't do this. And he was like, yeah, me and Diane think I'm going to do this.
I like Diane more than you, so.
King Henry participated in the joust for this marriage celebration. And in the process, he was injured. His face was pouring with blood. And there was apparently splinters of good bigness in his face and eye. So basically, he took a jousting spear to the face, and there was a whole bunch of large chunks of wood coming out of his face, including one in his eye, and blood everywhere. Queen Catherine, Diane de Poitiers, and Prince Francois all fainted. Like, this was traumatic for them. That people are passing out because this looks disgusting. 5 splinters were removed from his face, but there was one that had pierced his eye. And they were like, maybe it's worse if we pull it out. So they just left it there?
That seems like a bad choice.
Yeah, it was kind of like a wait and see what happens. Maybe this large piece of wood will work its way out of his eyeball.
I mean, in their defense, they didn't know about blood, so they didn't really know if it was going to...
Yeah. And they didn't have any way to, like, x-ray it to see, like, how deep it had gone.
And just hanging out with, like, wood in your eye.
Right?
I don't know, like, your eyelash.
I don't even like getting a small splinter in my finger. I can't imagine a giant splinter in my eyeball. And you probably know this because you're a nurse, but it didn't get better. It did not work its way out, believe it or not.
Shocking.
And it had gone so far into his eye that it was actually also in his brain. The splinter went all the way into his brain.
Well, then maybe they kept him alive longer not pulling it out.
Maybe. I mean, he was not going to make it either way.
To start with. Yeah.
Exactly. And they even called in a famous surgeon of the time, and surgeon is in air quotes. This guy wasn't a famous surgeon yet. At this point, he was a guy who wanted to be a surgeon who was still a barber, but maybe had some natural talent. And he would become a famous surgeon.
Cutting is cutting, right?
Yeah.
Not really.
So they had him come in, and he looked at it, and he was like, I don't really know. Would it be possible for you to kill some of your prisoners in your dungeon so that I can practice on somebody else? And the queen was like, yeah, definitely. I can do that. No problem.
Sounds legit.
She went to the dungeon. She killed like 5 guys. I mean, she didn't with her bare hands, but she's like, yeah, we need like 5 guys so that this guy can practice. So this guy decided he needed to recreate the wound on a corpse and then try and practice. So he kept jamming their faces with jousting spears, and he kept messing up. He was not able to recreate this situation.
But they were dead.
They are dead, but he kept messing up their faces and not in the right way. Finally, like the fourth or fifth guy, he gets it right. He finally stabs him in the face the right way. He's like, yes, this is what the king looks like. Now let me just see if I can fix this. I mean, he's dead, so they're not fixing it, but he's trying to see, checking out the eyeball a bit. This is his med school. These are his cadavers.
Oh my goodness.
So he's working on it. People are watching. This is like Grey's Anatomy when everyone sits up in the theater and watches the surgery. That's like this newfangled famous surgery, and they're like, oh, this is going to be amazing if he can pull this off. He finally gets done, and he tells the queen, sorry, there's nothing I can do. It's not going to work. The king is going to die. I can't fix this.
Well, A for effort.
Yeah. All those poor prisoners. I mean, I guess I don't know what they did. Hopefully something terrible. Not like stealing bread to feed their family or something.
I mean, that's probably what it was.
Right? So Queen Catherine decided that she was going to stay by the king's bedside. And he was conscious. He was sometimes feeling good enough to dictate letters for other people to write out for him. He still has the splinter in his eyeball. And by splinter, I mean a large shard of wood. This is way larger than a splinter because it goes all the way into his brain. Catherine stayed by his bedside, but Diane stayed away because she was afraid the queen was going to expel her from court. She was like, the queen's having a bad day. I should stay away. And so she was laying low, not with the king. Although the king did continually ask for Diane. So how annoyed are you if you're his wife and you're sitting with him at his deathbed and he's just like, but where's Diane?
Like, where's my beloved Diane?
Yeah, like I need Diane. Diane is who I want here. And for the next few days, Henri's state fluctuated.
Would not have blamed her if he was like, where's my precious Diane? If she would have just twisted that wood a little.
Right? That's so uncomfortable. Giant splinter in the eye. Oh, gross. So sometimes he felt well enough to dictate letters and listen to music, but slowly the king lost sight. Then he lost his ability to speak, and then he lost all reason. He had gone, as far as they could tell, completely insane.
What a sad, slow death.
Yeah, he had developed an infection in his brain, and he died at the age of 40.
They at least have the juice of the poppy flower.
They did not. They did not have milk of the poppy.
Oh.
They did have some pain-killing stuff, but not much. Honestly, at this point, you're probably just like drinking as much wine as you can.
I mean, I would be drunk.
Yep, me too, 100%. I'd probably be drunk when I showed up at the joust. That's probably why I got injured in the face in the first place.
100%.
So he died of a brain infection at the age of 40. And it was after this that the kings of France stopped actively participating in jousts, because it turns out they're dangerous. And they were like, maybe we don't have the king participate in fake battle.
We're watching now.
Yeah. So back to Nostradamus' prophecy, he had said that King Henry would die in his 40th year in battle. And he had died at the age of 40, but you could argue that was his 41st year. And he had died in fake battle, so that's a type of battle.
I mean, the odds were kind of in his favor that he would die in some sort of battle.
Around that age. And it feels sort of like confirmation bias. Like, because was that his 40th year? No, that was his 41st year if he was 40. And battle, that's a stretch for a joust that you are being begged not to participate in by your wife. And you're like, I'm doing it.
It's like, someone prophesied my death at 40 in a battle. I should definitely do battle.
This isn't real battle. What are the chances? But to Catherine, it proved that Nostradamus was right. She was like, oh my gosh, this guy knows things. He basically said exactly what happened. Catherine decided that she needed to change her sigil, which is the thing that just represents her in picture form. And she changed her sigil to a broken lance. That's how massive an effect this was on her life. With the words that were in Latin, but in English they mean, from this come my tears and my pain, which is real extra. But also it's kind of poetic sounding in Latin. I'm not going to attempt that pronunciation, but it does kind of flow in Latin.
Kind of a drama queen.
Yeah, she was definitely, she wanted people to know that she is the sad dowager queen who got her husband stolen from her by a horrible jousting accident. And she wore black for the rest of her life. So it was kind of like a Queen Victoria situation.
Oh,
Even though the custom at the time in France was to wear white for mourning, she felt like black was a much better color for her. It was much more striking. It made her look better. So she was like, I'm not going to wear white. I'm going to wear
it's slim.
black. Black and expensive. That was her clothing style choice. All her clothes were the most expensive fabric and jewels that you could get. She was very dramatic. She's striking, and that was what she was going for. She wanted respect. Catherine's oldest son, Francois, was now the new King of France at the age of 15, and his wife, Mary, Queen of Scots, 17, was the new Queen Consort of France. She's the new Catherine. Catherine, at this point, is the Queen Mother. This is when Mary, Queen of Scots' uncles took over. They moved in with the young couple at the Louvre one day after King Henry died. This was what they were working for. And one day later, they're like, well, they're in charge now, so we're moving in with them. The English ambassador reported a few days later that the House of Guise ruleth and doth all about the French king. So they were like, yeah, the House of Guise is basically running the country. They bought his love with a pretty girl, and it worked. Catherine worked with the Guise family out of necessity. She was a commoner. She had no real power because her husband had died. She wasn't the Queen of France anymore. She was the Dowager Queen or the Queen Mother. She really leaned into the title Queen Mother because she felt it was like more respect. Like she's like, I'm
And
not
she
just,
worked so hard for kids.
yeah, like,
I would lean into it too.
yeah, she was like, I'm not just the wife of the dead king. I am the mother of the future king and all of his siblings. And even though the Guise family was kind of controlling them through Mary, because her uncles would tell Mary, Queen of Scots, like, this is what we need him to do. And then she'd be like, Francois, this is what we should do. And he'd be like, okay, let's do that. So they were definitely in control.
Yeah, yeah.
But he did respect his mother. All of his official acts began with these words. This being the good pleasure of the Queen, my lady mother, and I also approving of every opinion that she holdeth, am content and command that, fill in the blank. They all started that way. So he's basically like, look, this is what I think, but mostly because my mom thinks it, and I want you all to know that my mom thinks this is a good idea.
Kind of sounds like a mama's boy, but maybe it could be sweet. I don't know.
100%. 100%. There was, but also she was kind of a clingy mom because remember with her husband and that whole Diane de Poitiers thing. So she wanted her children to be clingy. He was definitely a mama's boy. Quite a few of her sons were. There
She
is
a toxic boy mom.
Yeah. She is definitely way too involved in the baking process. There is a legend. Now I don't know if this is true. I kind of want to say it's just one of those stories, but here's how the story goes. The story is that Catherine had a magic mirror, which, I want magic mirrors to be real, but I've not ever seen one, so I'm going to go with maybe they're not. The story goes that Catherine saw a vision in this magic mirror. And first she saw the head of her oldest son, Francois II, and his head rotated one time.
Ew.
Then she saw the head of her second son, Charles, and his head rotated 14 times. And then she saw the head of her third son, Henri, and his head rotated 15 times. And then she did not see Hercule's head. She saw a different person after that. So that's how the story goes. That might be relevant later. One of Catherine's first acts of business was to banish Diane de Poitiers from court. She was like, okay, now that my husband's dead, get out. And Diane was kicked to the curb. And the queen made Diane return all of the crown jewels because the king had given the crown jewels to his mistress, not his wife, as he was supposed to. So she's like, get out and give me back all my jewelry. So she was patient with Diane until the moment her husband died, and then she was like, get out. I don't never want to see you again. So Catherine took them back, but in theory, she should have handed the crown jewels over to Mary, Queen of Scots, because she's the new Queen of France. But Catherine wanted her turn with the crown jewels, so she just kept them.
I mean, I don't blame her.
Right? She's like, I didn't even get a chance. My husband's mistress had him this whole time. And, you know, we can't pull on that thread. She wanted her turn with the crown jewels. Like, I get it. She hadn't, she's 40 and she's never had her chance with the crown jewels yet. Mary Queen of Scots is 17. She's got plenty of time. The Guise brothers' first act of business, Mary Queen of Scots' uncles, was to deal with all of those pesky Protestants. Because they were very, very Catholic. They were very Catholic even in terms of French, which a lot of French people were very Catholic. They were like the mega Catholics of France. And they did not like the Protestants. And the French Protestants were known as the French Huguenots. Have you heard of the French Huguenots?
No.
Okay, well, you're about to. The French Huguenots were French Protestants. The English Protestants were mainly Lutheran because they followed Martin Luther and his teachings. The Scottish Protestants were mostly Presbyterian because they followed John Knox and his teachings. The French Protestants were mainly Calvinists because they followed the teachings of John Calvin. And the French Huguenots are some of the people that we are descended from. They are our ancestors. So just keep that in mind when we talk about the French Huguenots that are, I don't know how many times great-great-great-grandparents are part of these people. They are French, they are Protestants, they are part of the French Huguenots.
I already like them.
Yep. So Catherine, she didn't love the French Huguenots because she was also Catholic, and she's like, these Protestants are problems. But she wanted to look for a more moderate path. She was like, look, we can tolerate their existence. We don't want to let them be in charge of anything. But we don't need to kill them. That seems excessive. Which, for the time, was super progressive. Because tons of... England was killing them. Scotland was killing them.
Killing was kind of the option back then.
Yeah. So this was seen as very progressive for her to be like, maybe we just let them be poor people in our town.
Maybe we could upgrade their lives to just plain old poor people.
Yeah, they don't need to be dead people. They can just be not in power people. And the Protestants looked for a friend in King Antoine of Navarre, who was first Prince of the Blood, which is a cool nickname.
Yeah.
A Prince of the Blood is someone... The way the royal family worked is you had to be male to be the king. You couldn't... They wouldn't have a queen. Girls were out. And you had to be descended from a line of men. So every time someone had a daughter, dead end. Their kids don't count anymore. They are not princes of blood. But if your dad and your grandpa and your grandpa and your grandpa, all the way up to the royal family was male, you were a prince of the blood. And first prince of the blood means that he was the highest ranking of all the princes of the blood if the Valois family faltered, meaning King Francois and all of his 4 brothers, and they didn't have male heirs. This King of Navarre was the next in line to the throne because he was descended through an all-male line from a king of France. And he had a brother, Louis de Bourbon, Prince of Condé. And I'm pretty sure I'm saying Condé wrong, but that's just how I say it.
Imagine how statistically low that is to have a line of all men.
Right. Yeah, that's why the King of Navarre was next up after the French royal family, because that's how they had to find, like... It was hard to get, like, a straight male line, but that is the whole thing. They had to go off of Salic law, which means men only, and only if they're descended through men, because that's what started the 100 Years' War. The King of England was claiming he was the King of France because his mother was a princess of the blood. And they didn't want to just hand France to England, so they were like, no, it can't go through women either. Like, not only do we not crown women, but we don't crown children of royal women. So that's why they had to do it, because if they didn't, the King of England would be the King of France. So the two political factions in France, like in England and in Scotland, were basically the Protestants and the Catholics. That's like our Republicans and Democrats. There was the Catholic side, there was the Protestant side. And Navarre, the King of Navarre, was like, yeah, let's go toe-to-toe with these Guises. Like, they're way too Catholic, and they should be more tolerant, and we like Protestant, because they were also Protestant. Navarre was a Protestant country. So the Guises, the Catholics, and the Bourbons, the Protestants, were fighting for power. And Catherine attempted to cool the flames. She invited Louis, the Prince of Condé, the younger brother of the King of Navarre, to court. And then she had him arrested and sentenced to death. So she was picking a side. But then there was a bump in the road. The new King Francois, the teenager, he was sick. He had an ear infection.
Oh.
And an ear infection means something else in a world that doesn't have antibiotics.
Right.
His ear infection got so bad that he got a large abscess behind his ear.
Oh. Behind his ear?
Behind his ear.
Not like his eardrum?
The infection started behind his eardrum, but then there became a large abscess behind his ear.
Golly.
And they decided that they would drain it because that's really all they knew what to do.
Yeah.
And according to some records of the time, they got out liters of pus.
Oh, gross.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's possible. That sounds like a lot of pus to just be draining from your ear, but that's what they say, liters.
I feel like it's not possible for that part of your body.
I
can
wouldn't
see a lot of pus coming out.
think.
Like, if you have like a massive abdominal one, I've seen the tonsil one have a lot, but like that's not a fleshy part of your body.
Right?
I could be wrong. Hey, have any doctors listening? Tell us we're wrong.
Yeah, we're open to feedback. So they drained potentially liters of pus out of this teenager's head. If the young king died, the Bourbons would be in a stronger position because they were the princes of the blood. So they had the right to be regents of the next king because the Guises wouldn't have power anymore if Mary, Queen of Scots, was no longer the queen. They would lose their shot. And without the king, she wouldn't be, and she would never get the crown jewels. She only got them if her husband lived. She wouldn't even be the queen mother because they didn't have children yet. So even Catherine would outrank her because they were both former queens, but one of them had all those royal babies and one of them did not.
Rude.
So Catherine made a deal with the Bourbons, and they said they would give up their right to be regent and let Catherine do it instead. And if they did that, she would release Louis. Remember, he got arrested and sentenced to death?
Oh, yeah.
She's like, I got your guy in prison. I'll let him go if you say you don't want to be regent. Because she doesn't want Protestant regents. And her next son is still very young. I think he's about 10.
Oh.
And when they attempted to drain all that pus out of the king's abscess, they didn't do it exactly as should have been done because it also ended up draining into his brain. It was draining out both sides.
Oh.
Yeah. So Francois did die of his ear infection. It led to abscesses in his brain. Similarly to the way his father had died, only without the lance. He got an ear infection, but abscesses in the brain. So it's that weak Valois immune system striking again.
Uh-huh.
They kind of, it's a habit. They die of things like infection or tuberculosis or bad colds.
Syphilis.
Yes, they don't have the best constitution. Because the Bourbons gave up their right to be regent, Catherine was made regent for her son, Prince Charles. The king is dead, long live the king, 10-year-old King Charles IX. And Catherine wrote to her daughter Elizabeth, the one who was the Queen of Spain. Remember back in the day when she got married to the King of Spain? When she was 13, she wrote to her daughter, "My principal aim is to have the honor of God before my eyes in all things and to preserve my authority, not for myself, but for the conservation of this kingdom and for the good of all your brothers." So she was like, look, God wants me in charge because I have to save this for my sons.
Uh-huh.
At the new king's royal consecration, he cried because he was just 10.
Will be remembered.
Thanks for listening.